Welcome back to our study in the book of Romans. This is Sonship Orientation, and this is session number 94. And we've been talking about that murmuring and complaining issue, and I just want to say that if you find yourself, now remember, this is murmuring and complaining under the assault of the policy of evil. That is called the sufferings of Christ. By the way, let me ask you a question. What is one of the ways in which you will tell the difference between just the suffering of this present time and the sufferings of Christ? What is one of the ways you'll be able to identify this is an attack from the policy of evil and not just something that's happened to me because I'm living in a fallen world? How will you know the difference? Somebody call you a nut? Okay. It'll have a religious overtone? Okay. Okay, there's another aspect to this that I want you to have in your thinking, and that's this. If it's the suffering of this present time, and it happens to you, that, no matter what you do with sonship, it doesn't change that. If it's the policy of evil, as soon as you stop your sonship, whatever that attack is, immediately goes away.
But we won't know that unless we stop, and I don't intend to.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear. But someone on the tape is going, what? And so I'm going to repeat that. Cliff is saying, well, we won't know that unless we stop, and I'm not intended to stop. But I'm just saying though, when that, by the way, that's not the only way you know. You'll be able to discern. As you go through the education, you really will be able to discern. Let me just give you, for instance, sitting in the doctrine in chapter 29 of Proverbs, there are two verses sitting over there in verses, I think, 4 and 5 or 5 and 6. And they say this. The first one says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest thou also be," and I can't remember how it goes. The very next verse says, "Answer a fool according to his folly, because blah, 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 blah." And so you have a verse that says, "Answer not a fool according to his folly." The very next verse says, "Answer a fool according to his folly." And everybody looks at that and scratches their head. Now, even before I got to sonship, I knew the answer to this, but it was only accidental. I say it was only accidental because I didn't know it within the framework of sonship. But here's the deal. In sonship, there is a nuance I didn't know, so let me just tell that part to you. When you get to that, by the way, if that's Israel's program and it's in Proverbs 29, aren't you talking about a pretty advanced son? That's right toward the end of their curriculum. You know what that means? That you will have the ability. Sometimes you'll encounter a fool and you'll know when to answer him and when not to answer him. You'll be able to discern between the two. Now, I would have answered it this way before, and this answer is right. It's just not the full answer, and that is there are different kinds of fools. Some you answer and some you don't. The thing is, sonship teaches you how to discern what those are. Because if you ask him, what kind of fool are you, that's not really the way to find that out. That's, people don't respond well to that question. Take my word for it. Right. The whole education is going to equip you to deal with that. And you'll just look at, by the way, and I know we mentioned this before, and that is, y'all got my red light on. Turn that off. Thank you. Yeah. So, this, that distracted me all right, but it did get what you wanted. The other thing is, that when you're a son and you move through the curriculum, let's suppose you're phase 2, level 2 son. Everybody you meet that is below you in sonship, you'll know exactly where they are. You'll be able to identify that. And I'm going to encourage you to do this. When someone below you comes along and says, "Where are you in your sonship?" don't answer that question. That's not the important issue. For them, the important issue is where are they? It's not a horse race. But I don't think that's the thing that you need to be talking to folks about. You'll see, if you don't already discern the wisdom in that, you will. Because that's not the thing. sometimes people have asked me that. How far along are you? They go, well, they want to know, well, where is Monahan's? Okay, well, and then they go, well, if you're now you've got to be somewhere ahead of them. Where are you? So what I've learned to say is it's not important where I am. And they go, well, are you this? And I go, here's all you need to know. I'm ahead of you. So just don't worry about it. It's not important about that. Now, to me, it's important where I am, but it's not important. That doesn't help them at all. If they look at me and they say, oh, you're here, they don't know enough about what they don't know yet to be able to do anything with that information. Huh? Answer the fool according to his folly. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's good. So you understand what I'm saying. You'll be able to identify. What you won't be able to do is look at someone ahead of you and go, how far ahead of me are they? Because you're not there yet, you don't know what things to look for. But because you'll have come through the education, everybody that ever follows behind you, you'll always know. I'm not saying that so you can go, ha, I know where you are and you don't know where I am. That's not the deal. I'm just trying to say there's knowledge that comes with going through the curriculum.
Mike,
Yes?
kind of like when you first started out, say kids that are in elementary and then junior high and high school, somebody in second grade can say, oh, well, what grade are you in? Well, you could tell in 10th grade
That means absolutely nothing to them, right? Yeah, that's a good illustration, right? Someone can say, what grade are you in? I'm in 10th grade. To a 6th grader, the only thing he knows is you're in high school. Other than that, he has no clue. Right. Good illustration. I wish I'd have thought of that one. Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, mutual edification. Okay, I got it. Philippians. I'm going to take you back to the book of Philippians now. And in this context that we've been talking about, in a moment, Paul is going to give us the names of 2 women in the Philippian church that have fallen victim to this policy of evil attack, of murmuring and complaining. But I want to back you up in the same chapter, and I want to show you something first. I say back you up. This is 15 and 16. I want to take you ahead just a couple of verses. Verse... well, what is that, 15 and 16? Well, we'll just take it up in 16. Nevertheless, whereto we have already attained, let us walk by the same rule, let us mind the same thing. Now, when he says, let us mind the same thing, what's he talking about? Say that in different words to me. Let us mind the same thing. Yeah, let's think the same way. Let's all, we say let's all get on the same page mentally. That's what he's talking about here. Let us mind the same thing. Brethren, be followers together of me, and mark them which walk so as you have us for an ensample. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ. Now I want you to notice what he says about these folks. And why he says, I tell you weeping. Why does he say, I'm weeping when I'm telling you this, that they are enemies of the cross of Christ?
Because they think they're doing so.
Yeah, you know what? These are folks that you're going to find out are involved in laboring with Paul. What are they doing wrong? Murmuring and complaining. That griping about having to suffer for sonship. And Paul, that's a pretty tough label, isn't it? I tell you now, even weeping, that they are enemies of the cross. You know what he's pointing at here? Now you're beginning to see there's a bigger issue sitting back here. It's bigger even than did you have a good day or a bad day. It's an issue that could actually make you an enemy of the cross. That doesn't mean they're not saved. It just means their conduct is totally contrary to what it ought to be. All right, now, with that, let me take you now to where I wanted to take you, and that is 19. Whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. And the reason they're complaining is because they're concerned about the things of this earth, the things of this life. And Paul is going to say there is something, and as I used the word in the first session, there's a cause that is much bigger than what goes on with us in this life. This cause is way bigger. And again, we're kind of working our way toward that. Now, verse 20. For our conversation is in heaven, from whence also we look for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall change our vile body, that it may be fashioned like unto His glorious body, according to the working whereby He is able even to subdue all things unto Himself. Now, I'll tell you two things about this. First of all, when he says our conversation is in heaven, I want to talk about that. The way most of those Bibles, other than your King James Bible, translate that word is they translate that word as citizenship. Your citizenship is in heaven. In other words, they're saying, you may be here on this earth, but your real country is heaven, and one day that's where your citizenship is because you're saved, and one day you're going to go back to heaven. They don't, even those people, some of them believe you're going to come back and spend eternity on the earth. But right now, your citizenship is in heaven. That's the way they, just all kinds of things. But I want you to know that the Bible, if what was meant to go there was citizenship, that would have been the word. But it's not. In fact, citizenship is not really even, if you were going to use that word, that's not even the correct word. I know what the word in the Greek is about. And that's not what I'm not going to do an exposition of the Greek here for you because it'll be like, what grade are you in? 10th grade. That means nothing to us. But I understand what that word in the Greek is, but when they use that word conversation, there's two things you need to know about that. By the time you're a level 2 son and you're getting your doctrine out of Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians, there is a conversation going on in heaven about you. You are known up there. And you're making an impact up there in ways that unless you get told about it, and you do get told about it, you wouldn't even know you were having an impact because it's the area you don't see with your physical eyes. And your Father wants you to understand that you really are going to make an impact up there. Now, that's only the first part of what it means to have a conversation in heaven. It won't be until next week that we're going to talk about the other side of that coin. But that conversation that's in heaven is the principalities and powers talking about you. That means as a level 2 son, Gloria is going to be talked about in the heavenly places. Principalities and powers are going to know who she is and what she's becoming, and they're going to know what she has a chance to become. And so what they're going to do is unleash a very clever aspect of the policy of evil. Principalities and powers will do this. I didn't say Satan. I said principalities and powers will unleash a very specific aspect of the policy of evil that as she is suffering under that policy of evil, it is meant to get her not to quit her sonship, but to just complain about her suffering. And when she does that, they have successfully eliminated God's big issue from the equation. The one thing that God wanted to do cannot be done as long as she's in that mode. So they're going to unleash that on her. And they'll talk about her. But remember, they can't put that on Gloria until she's to the place where she's ready. She's gotten to that place in the doctrine. In other words, they could never put that on her back here before she's a simple son. But as a level 2 son, there is actually something that they're waiting to see in her. It's the signal that lets them know we now have the green light to do this. And they can't do it until that happens. But when Gloria gets to a certain place, that will be the signal. When we get over there, I'll show it to you. And when they see that signal, they go, okay, here it comes. But you remember, the devil doesn't come in red jammies with his pitchfork out, wiggling his pointy tail, and, going hook 'em horns. He's not doing that. This attack is subtle. And even though you've been warned about it, if you're not careful, you won't see it coming. Remember when Karen said, wiles, it's a trap. Yeah, it's something you walk into that you don't realize what you're walking into. And that's going to lead me to tell you about this right here. Because as you get into phase 2, you're going to get knowledge and discretion. Now in a moment I'm going to take you over there, but I'm going to kind of spoil it for you right here. Look, the knowledge, when you think of knowledge, what do you think of? Okay, you said wisdom. What'd you say, Cliff? Information. All of that's right. Anybody else? Knowing. All of those are right. But look, that's a pretty broad term, isn't it? By the time you get over to here, don't you already have some knowledge? Well, yeah, you do. You have quite a bit of knowledge. Here's the point I want to make to you. That even though the table of contents in Proverbs 1 is just calling it knowledge and discretion, it really is talking about a certain kind of knowledge. It is very specific. But because it's just a table of contents, it's not explaining it. You go to the table of contents in any book, it gives you what? A very general description of what's in that chapter. But it doesn't give you the details. Well, neither does the table of contents in Proverbs 1. So you look at it and you go, oh, knowledge and discretion. Well, let me tell you what this knowledge is. This knowledge very specifically pertains to dealing with the subtlety of the policy of evil as it tries to trap you without you knowing you're being trapped. This is a knowledge that subtlety that you got before, and this knowledge allows you to see through what's happening. That's the first part. Now look, and here's the next thing. Discretion. Okay, Karen says prioritize. Somebody else? All right, you can kind of see discern in there. There's something else about discretion. Okay, here's the thing about discretion, and the reason it's hooked with knowledge. Someone said, I think Karen said wisdom, and Clifford said information, and what'd you say, Linda? You said knowing. All of those are right. But having wisdom or information or knowing, having knowledge about something is one thing. But let me tell you what discretion does. These are going to go together. Well, you know what? I'm going to give it to you. So let me just. Yeah, see, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you where this is a very specific kind of knowledge. And this is going to be accompanied with something that allows you to see down the road. Because here's how it works. I have wisdom, and right now this looks like a really wise decision. But there's something I'm supposed to put with that wisdom that allows me to see that down the road, is that still going to be a wise decision? Have you ever seen those turn around on you? And so God says it's not just looking at it right now and saying, yeah, this looks pretty smart. But it's the ability to see where that's going to take you on down the road. And now you're able to go, you know what, it looked good right now? About a year from now, this is going to turn around and bite me. So no thank you.
Is it kind of discretion? It's kind of like picking little parts out that as a whole you might see it as, oh, this is good. But then when you start taking little...
Part of it is going to work that right. As you're going to be able to see aspects of it, yes. It's going to be an ability to see, you know, we talked about subtlety, seeing beyond the surface. Now this is going to take that a step further to be able to really see what this is going to do for us. By the way, isn't that the kind of knowledge everybody wants? I don't only want to know if it's going to work for me today. I'll give you a perfect example. when those commercials come on that a guy's got arthritis pain or he feels like the walls are crushing in on the commercial, and he takes they're advertising some kind of drug. I told Billy, I said, just wait. In 3 years, some attorney will have that drug on there that he's not going to sue him over. I said, this is just the way this works. We're going to give you a drug today that's going to help you, and in 5 years, some attorney will take your case and we'll turn around and sue him because you took the drug. Now, I'm not trying to comment about that except to say that wisdom by itself would look at that and go like, oh, that's going to help my arthritis pain right now. But what if that gave you a heart problem down the road? Now, I'm not justifying our society is way too litigious. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, it just is. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. We sue people over stuff that, it ought to be just settled a whole different way.
That's what the serpent did to Eve. He offered them an apple.
And that was...
So sweet. But it turned out
That's right, exactly right. It looked like, she said it was pleasant to the eyes, a food to be desired to make one wise. It was all the good things right then. But the end result of that was the exact opposite. Well, there you go. This, in level 2, because the policy of evil is going to ramp up, God says, before it can come against you, I'm going to equip you to handle that ramped up policy of evil. So that's really the good part of that. Okay, now again, we're going to do that. We're going to do that, but I need to get on down the road with this here. Okay, so that conversation in heaven, that's what I needed you to see. Now, Philippians 4:1. Therefore, my brethren, dearly beloved and longed for, my joy and crown, so stand fast in the Lord, my dearly beloved. I beseech Eodius and beseech Syntyche that they be of the same mind in the Lord. What was that phrase we saw a while ago? I asked you what it was. Do you remember that? It says, let us mind the same thing. There it is up in verse 16. So he says here, now he's picked that theme up and he goes, now you two ladies, I need you to be of the same mind in the Lord. He hasn't changed the context of what he's doing here. He's still talking about this complaining. In fact, he's already said in chapter 3, don't do this with murmuring and disputings. Now, when he says these two, now I'm going to keep reading here, but I don't want you to get the idea that he's being mean to them. This is not like a preacher looking out at his congregation and going, now Ruby, you know good and well you hadn't been what you're supposed to be. And everybody's going, have you ever been in those? I've seen those happen. Those are not fun. But now Ruby. No, okay. Everybody on the tapes right now are loving this because they love it when we do that crazy stuff. See, this is not what Paul's doing. In fact, he's not going to talk to them at all like he did to the Corinthians. He's going to talk to them in a much different way. Let's keep reading this. So he says, I beseech, and when he says to these ladies, he knows something about them. That's why he knows their name. And he's not rebuking them, he's beseeching them. Now, look what else. I entreat thee also, true yokefellow, help those women which labored with me in the gospel. It wasn't that these women had quit. They were enduring the sufferings of Christ, and the policy of evil had gotten to them and made them start whining and complaining and griping about suffering for Christ. And I'm going to tell you something about this that'll make you understand a little more about it. But these are women which labored with Paul. So were they opposed to Paul? No. They didn't fall out of church. They weren't mad at Paul. And they weren't mad at God. They were just tired of suffering under the policy of evil. Now, I'm going to tell you what's in all likelihood what the deal is with them before we finish reading this passage. And that is, by the way, he talks about these two women. Do you ever wonder, why doesn't he mention their husbands? I'm going to tell you why. Because of the policy of evil, their husbands were either in prison or dead. And now they're out there fending for themselves. So Paul understands the sufferings they're going through are a product of the policy of evil, and it is a tough road. It is a hard thing. So he's not being mean or disrespectful to them. He's beseeching them, and he says, help those women. See, he's calling on the rest of the assembly, get around these two gals, and let's lift them up here. Let's help them out. They're undergoing this policy of evil. And by the way, we're going to learn, and we'll get this early on in Romans, we're going to learn that, folks, we're in this together. And when somebody is getting beat up under the policy of evil, the only help and understanding you're going to get is from the other people in this room. And if we don't get that message down, you're just going to be out there by yourself flailing against the policy of evil. So before you ever get faced with it, you get taught about godly love for the other members of your assembly. And so that's, so anyway, and so he's saying that same thing to them here. Okay, now, let's see. By the way, here's a reason Paul is even beseeching them, and I don't think I put these in the PowerPoint. Let me just look and see what the next verse is. No? Okay. Let me just tell it to you like this. Did I skip the Philippians verse? I did. Okay. Well, I'm glad I looked ahead. Let me tell you what's happening here, and I'm going to put this in a nutshell because I'm looking at the clock, and I really need us to get further than we are. Here's what's happening. You're advancing as a son. The policy of evil now knows it can't get you to quit, so what it's going to get you to do is it's going to bring some sufferings into your life, and it's going to make you murmur and complain and gripe about it. If you do, there are some things that are going to happen that God does not want to happen. The first thing that happens is your reputation that you will have purchased with your sonship prior to this is going to be ruined. And I'm not talking about your reputation on this earth. I'm talking about your reputation in the heavenly places. Because in these books, you're going to find out that and this is part of that big issue, the main sphere of your influence is not with men on this earth. The main sphere of your influence is in the heavenly places with the creatures up there. Now, that is not to say we don't carry the gospel to men and that we don't live in a way that people... I'm not saying that. I'm saying what you're going to learn is, in level 2, is that the main sphere of your impact is up there. And God means for that to happen while you're still here on this earth. That's part of that big issue that's sitting back there. And if you give in to this policy of evil, the first thing that gets ruined, because you have this reputation that's being built. And then you get over here, and now Satan is allowing you to be, you're being attacked just because of your sonship, and you're going, I am so sick and tired of this. I tell you what, I'm not going to quit, but you know what? You see how it's going to amount to the same thing. And now suddenly this reputation that you had, that here comes a son, and oh my goodness, and really there's trembling going on up there because of that. And so they're thinking, if we can get them to start murmuring and complaining, if we can get them to tempt Christ, then you know what? That reputation you built, let me ask you in the earthly life, you can spend 20 years building a reputation. How long does it take to ruin it? You can ruin it in a minute. And how long does it take to get it back? That's exactly right. Think about that now in the heavenly places. Now I'm going to tell you something. Here, not everybody sees what you do. Up there, they do. That's why I said there are things that can come out of your mouth that will completely undo everything you've been working to do. And as we were talking about at the break, you don't have to say it out loud. You can just be thinking it. It's going to show up. Now, not only does your reputation get ruined, here's the next thing. We haven't described exactly how this takes place yet, but you do know that you make an impact on the heavenly places, on the principalities and powers. And that impact, if you murmur and complain, is negated. There is no more impact being made on them. That completely goes away. And that can go away in an instant. And as I told you, this thing is very subtle that you're not supposed to see it this way. Now, let me put this third one up there because even though it's not what it's designed to do, you can see how it could result in this, that it could make you quit. If you're going to gripe about it, you may consider at some point, you know what, it's just not what? That's not worth it. And then you quit. If you quit, how much impact is being made? None. If you quit, what kind of reputation do you have? None. So see, either way, if you quit, it wasn't what this was designed to do, but sometimes it results in that. If you just don't see it coming. Or you have something?
Is this where Satan turns around and looks at God and says, I told you they were human and they couldn't do it?
Well, you know what? That's a real close thing. What she's saying for those on the DVD is this where Satan says to God, you know, I told you they were human, they couldn't do it. Because what God is wanting to say, see what? They are nothing but human, fragile earthen vessels, but my power in them can overcome anything you can throw at them. See?
Like what Paul's talking about, these two women, that they've gone through this stuff, they're starting to murmur and complain. So like when you're talking about the impact and stuff, can that be turned around where he's saying like help these women which labored with me in the gospel?
Yeah, they can be turned around.
That can still be
They can be turned around. They absolutely can. They can recover themselves from that. But to show you the severity of it, he does two things to show you the severity of it. The first thing is he takes you back into Israel's program. He says, you want to know how much God is counting on this not happening? They murmured and complained in the wilderness, and what did God do with them? He destroyed them. Hey, when you got bit by a serpent, what happened to you? You died. Remember, he talks about how many thousand died in a day. Remember all that we read over there? God's saying, you may not think murmuring and complaining is a big deal. I killed them over it. Now, here's what Paul, now you say, well, God's going to kill us over it. Well, you're not the Israel program. But here's how the terminology Paul is going to use. Enemies of the cross. What son would ever want to be labeled an enemy of the cross?
So this cause God has is so important. He sent His Son to make it.
Yes.
and we have to
That is the big issue behind that. And that's why you're an enemy of the cross, because that was the big issue that was being provided for in the cross. Yes, there was tons of other things, but that was the big issue. Okay, now I don't have it on the PowerPoint, but I'm just going to read it to you. Philippians 1:29. It's so important, I would just really like for you to turn there in your Bible and take a look at this. Philippians 1:29, because this is the same book we've been in. And now, yeah, we're back in chapter 1 in this reference, but I want you to see how Paul is setting up this context. In Philippians 1:29, for unto you it is given in the behalf of Christ not only to believe on Him, but also to what?
Suffer.
To suffer for His sake. In other words, there is something that that Christ is benefiting from through this suffering. It's for His sake. having the same conflict which you saw in me and now hear to be in me. He says, I understand that you guys are going through the same thing that you've heard I've gone through and that I'm going through right now. And he says, and when he talks about that in verse 29, he said, it is given to you for this to happen. That's why he's going to come along and say, and don't be murmuring and disputing when this happens to you, because you're killing the big issue when you do this. You're killing the cause that God had at work here. Okay, now let me take you 1 Corinthians chapter 2. And I, brethren, when I came to you, came not with excellency of speech or wisdom, declaring unto you the testimony of God. Now I want you to notice that he said, I didn't come with excellency of speech or wisdom. Doesn't mean, when you're talking about the excellency of is with both of those, an excellency of speech and an excellency of wisdom. You understand, it's understood to carry over. Well, why wouldn't he come to them with an excellency of wisdom? Now, excellency of speech is not, I had all these fancy words, but I didn't use them with you. That's not what excellency of speech is. When you talk about excellent in the Bible, let's talk about choices. You have a good choice, you have a better choice, and then you have an excellent choice. Well, when he talks about excellency of speech or of wisdom, he is talking about things that are among the highest that they can hear. And he said, I didn't come to you with that. Verse 2, this is a rebuke. For I determined not to know anything among you save Jesus Christ and Him crucified. He said, when I came to you guys, here's the only thing I could take for granted that you knew. Jesus died on the cross. Churches use that verse like a badge of honor. I heard a guy say that in his Sunday school class. We don't know anything but Christ and Him crucified. I thought, really? That's all you know? He's not bragging on them here. By the way, this is a letter of rebuke, not praise. Verse 3, and I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. And my speech and my preaching was not with enticing words of man's wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, that your faith should not stand in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Howbeit, we speak wisdom among them that are perfect, yet not the wisdom of this world, nor the prince of this world that come to naught. But we speak the wisdom of God in a mystery, even the hidden wisdom. And I want to talk to you about that hidden wisdom, which God ordained before the world unto our glory, which none of the princes of this world knew, for had they known it, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Now when he talks about the hidden wisdom, you know what he says? He says to the Corinthians, I can't talk to you about this. You know why he can't talk to them about it? Because they weren't at a place where they could hear the hidden wisdom. The hidden wisdom is not the fact that there was a dispensation of grace. That's not the hidden wisdom. Where do you think you would find the hidden wisdom? Where do you think you'd find that? In the sonship curriculum. They weren't, he said, I speak this among them that are what? Perfect. Remember that verse? Is he talking about sinless perfection? No, he's talking about mature sons. And he says, I can't talk to you about that. And now we continue. But as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God prepared for them that love Him. But God hath revealed them unto us by His Spirit. For the Spirit searcheth all things, yea, the deep things of God. So in verse 1, Paul says, I didn't come with the excellency of speech. They weren't able to bear it. In verse 2, he says the only thing he could count on them knowing was that Jesus was crucified on the cross. Not a compliment. In verse 6, he says, I speak this wisdom among them that are perfect. But that did not include the Corinthians. In verse 7, he says it's the hidden wisdom. And that hidden wisdom is the wisdom that a son gets. And by the way, if you want to know where the hidden wisdom is, it's sitting in Ephesians, Philippians, and Colossians. That's when a son gets hidden wisdom. That's when he's able to get that. And let me tell you what the hidden wisdom is. Let me just give this to you. This is a big part of it. This has to do with that big issue that's sitting behind everything. The hidden wisdom is the genius of God in, and I'll just give you a couple of things here, bringing about that dispensation of grace, but secondly, in dealing with us the way that He has. In other words, you said God's allowing the policy of evil to make us suffer. He's allowing that to happen. There is a genius in God dealing with us that way. And you wouldn't know it unless He told you about it. That's part of the hidden wisdom. And that's what it consists of. That big issue back there is that God doing it this way. That's why He said, I didn't come with you with the wisdom of men, but with this hidden wisdom. Something that you wouldn't know. You wouldn't naturally come to. But when I reveal this, He said, but when I speak to them that are perfect about this issue, they understand that there is real genius in what God is doing in the midst of all of this. What have we got left here? Not much. Let me just give you one last thing right here, and then we'll stop this one. And that is, I want to take you back over to the book of Proverbs, and I want to show you the exhortations that are sitting back over there that go with the level 2 education. So here we are, Proverbs 8:12. I, wisdom, this is wisdom talking here. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. This is the thing that I wanted to talk to you about. We almost got on it a while ago, where he says, we talked about wisdom. It says, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence. It almost sounds like two ladies, doesn't it? Wisdom and prudence. I don't know, I just think. Somebody tell me, what is prudence? Prudence is, let me just tell you, because of time. Prudence is what we talked about a while ago. Prudence is the ability to see the effect of a decision down the road in the future. That's prudence. And when you get wisdom and prudence together, then not only can you make a wise decision, but you know how it's going to turn out in the long run as well. That's why those two have to go together. By the way, can you have wisdom and not have prudence? I think you can. So you do need both, don't you? Now, by the way, and I'm not looking at it right here, but, oh man. Oh, I'm going to just jump ahead here, but let me just show it to you. Here we go. Look in Ephesians 1:8. Wherefore He hath abounded toward us in all what? Wisdom and prudence. Isn't it funny that in Proverbs, that exhortation in Proverbs 8 is for a level 2 son, and here you are in Ephesians, a level 2 son. And guess what you're getting? The exact same terminology. Wisdom and prudence. Wisdom and prudence.
Could that whip around and go right back into knowledge and discretion?
Okay, knowledge, yes, and that's going to be a part, right. That's going to tell you the kind of knowledge that we're talking about here. Not just knowledge in general, but it is going to be a knowledge of what's happening with a level 2 son right here. That specific knowledge. What do we call it? Hidden wisdom. It's the knowledge of the hidden wisdom, the genius of God doing everything just the way He's done it. The prudence that allows you to see the long-term result of this decision. And then we'll come back and talk about the discretion part of that. So what that's doing is really it's refining what kind of knowledge that is. Now I got 1 minute left and I don't have enough time to even read this next deal. So what I'm going to do is just back up here. And here, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. That's a really nice little turn, isn't it? Witty inventions. Maybe next week we'll talk about that a little bit. But here's the thing I wanted you to see right here is that the exhortation for level 2 of wisdom and prudence, when you get into Paul's epistles in level 2, that's where he brings that right out in the book of Ephesians. about having wisdom and prudence, because you're going to need that in order to see through what's the policy of evil that's coming your way. Let's turn the coin around on the positive side. You're not just going to be able to use that for the policy of evil. You're going to be able to use that to see things about your Father's business you didn't know about before. So there's a positive side to that too, where you now learn something else about your conversation in heaven. Something else that entails. This is really sometimes it's really good. Look, I hope that we don't get bogged down in the details so much that we lose the marvelousness of what we're looking at. This really is incredible stuff. And sometimes I think that I have to go to such lengths to prove to you that we're not just making this up. This is not some little cleverly spun fairy tale, that these things are actually sitting in the Word in the very places they're supposed to be. You know, I'm trying to go to the trouble to convince you of that so that you don't go home and go, I don't want you to wake up one day and go, I mean, I like Mike and everything, but is this just his idea? I'd love to be that smart, first of all. But secondly, I need you to have real confidence that this is what we're looking at. That you can see it for yourself. That when you're going, hey, the exhortation is talking about wisdom and prudence. And then you go to your epistles for level 2 and you, right off the bat, you're hit with wisdom and prudence. And you're going, wow, it's the same terminology even. I'm seeing it. That's why we go to the trouble. But my fear is that you get bogged down in the details of seeing the proof of it, that we lose the wonder of it. It's almost like you saying, look at that sunset. And you go, well, the atmosphere diffuses the light. When you have the sun at such an angle like this, and you have those cumulonimbus clouds that are positioned just the way they are, then what you have is a refraction of the light and the spectrum of the, you know, and you just want to look at the guy and go, are you nuts? It's just beautiful. Just stop and look at it. Quit analyzing it. So I'm verbalizing that to you to say, don't let this proof of it steal the wonder away. And I'll tell you why I'm doing it now. Because if I prove it to you in orientation, when we go back through the doctrine, that's all we have to focus on. I don't have to go back and prove it to you all over again. We'll have done that. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, you'll have already seen it. You already know. I knew this was coming. I expect this. I know this is in the Word. You know, He showed us this is what it was. Now here we are. I don't have to be wondering, is this what we're supposed to be doing? I can just concentrate on the doctrine. Okay.